Well, for a closer look at the state of the European Union, I'm joined by Nicholas Economides. He's a professor
Hello.
of economics at New York University's Stern School of Business. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, as we saw, Juncker covered several issues in his speech, but the underlying theme was about galvanizing the bloc. So what were the biggest takeaways for you from Juncker's speech?
Well, first of all, it was an attempt to say we're not really hurt by Brexit. That was number one. He didn't say it, but that was the one important thing in the speech. Second was we want to be more centralized. He wanted essentially a CEO for Europe. And he also wants, and I think in this particular second point, Germany and France agree, they want single European minister, Eurozone economics minister, who is going to play a crucial role for the Eurozone. He also said that he wants the countries in the European Union that do not have the euro to eventually converge to the euro. So these are extremely ambitious points of view, and there are countries like Sweden who, would object. I mean, they have decided not to have the euro. I mean, what are we going to do about that? So I see it as a very ambitious speech with over 10 targets, out of which probably 2 or 3 are going to be achieved.
So if you're one of these biggest trading partners for the EU and you're seeing some of the motion towards this more integrated single bloc, how do you think some of these big trade partners are viewing his sentiments?
Well, I think they have to wait and see. The EU is definitely not Juncker. There is a lot of different forces that are being balanced within the EU. So if I was one of the big trading partners, I would wait for a little while to see to what extent Juncker's positions are adopted by the majorities.
So then what do you see as the biggest challenges for the EU at the moment going forward?
Well, believe it or not, I think one of the problems has been the fiscal crisis has not ended. I mean, people want to say it has ended, but it really hasn't. It hasn't ended in Greece, which was kind of the deepest and worst case. But it hasn't ended. That's problem number one. Second, the reasons for the crisis haven't been eliminated. The fact that some countries like Greece are not doing well, they're not producing enough, but still they're locked in the euro, is a problem. I mean, if it's not Greece, it will be somebody else. Maybe it's going to be a bigger country like Italy, and that would be a complete disaster. That would be a real breakup of the European Union. So that's problem number one. Problem number two is that there has to be more convergence on economics and finance. There has to be a banking union with something like the FDIC for all banks in the EU. It's completely crazy that if you have a bank, let's say in Italy, and another bank in Germany, they can have quite different quality products because they don't have federal insurance or EU insurance, if I can put it that way. Then there are the basic problem of coordinating policy between the strongest country, Germany, and the European Central Bank. The European Central Bank has implemented something like the QE2, QE3 that we had here in the United States, but Germany disagrees. They don't say it very openly, but they do disagree. So Nicholas, these are difficult problems.
Nicholas, to that point, one of these issues really is about the inequality among EU citizens, which actually fueled some of the more protectionist stances that we heard in elections across Europe and also other parts of the world. So what sort of reforms then are needed to address that?
Well, there is no simple way to reduce inequality because increasing inequality is evident all over the world, and to a large extent is because of technological change, where we have new technologies like computer technologies or biotechnologies, which don't use so many workers and use a lot of capital, a lot of machines. So this is not something that the EU can fix easily. There is also another inequality between the north and the south of Europe, which could be fixed if there were transfers of money from the rich countries of the north to the poorer countries of the south. But I don't think that's going to happen either. I think that people in Europe see themselves primarily as their own nationality and only as a secondary way as Europeans, and therefore they're not going to very easily take their tax money and give it to another country.
Now, let's also look at some of the ongoing issues. As we mentioned with Brexit, Juncker said that Britain would soon regret its decision to leave the bloc. He said, quote, "We will move on because Brexit isn't everything. It isn't the future of Europe." So given what's happening with Brexit and what's happening with German elections that are going to be coming up, what does the future of the EU look like?
Well, I think that Juncker was correct about Brexit, that the British people are eventually going to regret it. They're not going to get a better deal from the EU, and they're not going to get a better deal from all the other countries around the world in doing individual negotiations compared to the negotiations they would do within the EU. So he's right about that. Now, German elections, we expect stability. We expect Mrs. Merkel to win again. We expect Mr. Schäuble to be finance minister again. So we don't really expect any big change there. Of course, Mrs. Merkel being re-elected so many times makes her the stable point in Europe. We will see how the negotiation between Germany and the ECB will evolve. As I said before, they have diverging opinions. We will see how they are going to be in the future.
All right, well, thank you so much for your insights. Nicholas Economides, Professor of Economics at the Stern School of Business at New York University.